The bus rattled through the desert like it was held together by memory and wire. The windows were streaked with dust, the air stale and heavy with the scent of heat and gasoline. Outside, Arizona burned, all red dust, black rock, and endless, empty miles. Isabella Cruz sat in the back, pressed against the window, her backpack clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time her eyes closed, she saw them. Men in suits, black cars, the flash of muzzle fire. The echo of a scream that didn't belong to her, but lived inside her anyway. She didn't remember. Much of the night she ran, only that she'd left blood behind, and that someone powerful would want her back. The bus jerked to a stop outside a diner that looked like it had been carved out of another decade. The driver called for a break, his voice tired. Isabella stepped off the bus, the sun stabbing her eyes. The desert smelled of dry grass and something distant burning. Her throat ached. Her clothes clung to her skin. She hadn't spoken to anyone since she left Juarez, crossing into Arizona under a false name, with fake papers and a promise she didn't trust. Inside the diner, the air conditioning hummed weakly. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and too much lipstick, poured her a coffee without asking. "Long road?" she asked. Isabella nodded. "Heading east?" "North," Isabella murmured. "Running from someone?" Isabella froze. The waitress smiled faintly. "Don't worry. Everyone who comes through here is—" Isabella gave a small, polite nod, then stared into her coffee. The steam blurred her reflection, turning her face into something unrecognizable, which was exactly what she wanted, until the bell above the door rang and he walked in. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair slicked back in a way that made him look more like a ghost than a customer. He wore a white shirt open at the throat, black trousers, no tie. His skin was sun-browned, his expression unreadable. But his eyes were impossible. Sharp, gray, and tired in a way that only men who had seen too much could be. He didn't look around when he entered. He didn't need to. The room adjusted to him. The waitress straightened. The truckers at the counter fell quiet. The air changed. He took a seat 2 booths away from Isabella, his back to the wall. He didn't look at her, but she felt it anyway, that pull. That awareness that had followed her since she crossed the border. Something in him recognized something in her, the hunted, the broken, the still breathing. She finished her coffee, trying to ignore the way his presence filled the room like a storm about to break. But when she stood to leave, his voice stopped her. "You forgot your bag." She turned. He was holding it, one hand resting lightly on the worn strap. Her pulse jumped. "Thank you." He nodded once, his gaze steady. "You planning to keep running?" Her mouth went dry. "You don't know me." He smiled, a small, dangerous thing. "No, but I know your kind." "What kind is that?" "The kind that looks over their shoulder more than they look ahead." She reached for her bag, but he didn't let go. "Name?" he asked at She hesitated. "Elena." He tilted his head. "That's not true." Her heart stuttered. "What did you say?" He released the bag. "If you're going to lie, at least choose something you can answer to." She stared at him, caught between anger and fear. "Who are you?" He leaned back in his seat, calm, composed. "Someone who doesn't ask twice." She left before he could say anything else. The desert air hit her like a wall. She climbed back onto the bus, her hands trembling. But when the driver shut the door and pulled onto the road, she saw him again, through the cracked rearview mirror, standing outside the diner, hands in his pockets, watching the bus disappear. And for a moment that felt like a warning, he smiled. By the time the bus reached Tucson, the sun was gone and the desert had turned to shadow. The passengers filed off one by one, the station lights flickering weakly overhead. Isabella checked her phone, no signal. She walked fast, head down toward the cheap motel 2 blocks away. Room 16, door that didn't lock right. Window that wouldn't close, perfect for someone who didn't exist. She showered, changed, tried to eat. Sleep came in broken pieces, like glass cutting her skin, and when she woke, the chair by the window wasn't empty anymore. He was sitting there, calm, silent, his eyes reflecting the neon sign outside. Isabella gasped, stumbling back. How did you? Lock was easy. His voice was low, even. You're not very good at hiding. What do you want? She demanded. He stood slowly, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat of him. To know why a girl with haunted eyes crossed the border with a cartel ledger in her bag. Her blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. He smiled faintly. Lying again. Get out. He didn't move. I can protect you. I don't need protection. Yes, he said softly. You do, because the men who want that book, they don't leave witnesses. And you, Isabella, are their last one. Her name in his mouth was both a promise and a threat. Who are you? She whispered. He stepped closer. So close she could feel the weight of his gaze like hands on her skin. They call me Damien Vargas. Her stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone did. The head of the Vargas cartel. The man whose empire stretched from Mexico to Texas. The one even his enemies feared. You're lying, she whispered. He smiled, slow and tired. If I were, you'd still be alive tomorrow. She froze. You're going to kill me. No, he said. I'm going to keep you alive until I find out why you took what belongs to me. Her breath caught. And if I didn't? Then you'll tell me who did. And if I don't tell you anything? He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, Then I'll have to make you remember. The room fell silent. The rain began again outside, soft, steady, relentless. She couldn't tell if she wanted to run or to stay, because something in his voice, something dark and broken, didn't sound like a threat, it sounded like a confession. The storm didn't stop for 2 days. Thunder rolled over Tucson, washing the city clean and raw. Neon lights reflected in the puddles outside the cheap motel, turning the parking lot into a trembling mosaic of blue and red. Inside the room was dim, the blinds half drawn, the air thick with silence and the faint scent of rain and cigarettes. Isabella. Cruz hadn't left since the night Damien Vargas appeared. She hadn't run either. She told herself she was only waiting for her chance, that the first time he turned his back, she'd be gone. But some part of her knew it wasn't fear that kept her still. It was curiosity. Or maybe madness. He was sitting across from her now in the same chair by the window, watching the rain. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, veins traced under bronze skin. There was a gun on the table between them. His. Not hers. Placed there like an unspoken boundary neither had dared to cross. She broke the silence first. You've been watching me since the diner. He didn't look at her. Longer. Her throat tightened. How long? Since you crossed the border. Her pulse stuttered. Then you knew who I was. He finally turned to her, gray eyes steady. I knew what you were running from, which is men who don't like loose ends. She laughed bitterly. And you're not one of them? I am, he said simply. But I choose which ones to tie. The rain beat against the window like impatient fingers. She stood, restless, pacing the narrow space between the bed and the wall. You still haven't told me what you want from me. I told you, he said. The truth. And if I don't have it? Everyone has it, he murmured. They just hide it in different places. She stopped pacing. You think I'm lying. I know you are. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice dropping to something low and magnetic. When people tell the truth, their eyes stop moving. Yours never stay still. Maybe I just don't like being stared at. He smiled faintly. That's a lie, too. You like it when someone sees you. Her chest tightened. You don't know me. He stood, closing the distance between them in 3 measured steps. No, he said quietly. But I recognize what lives behind your eyes. What's that? She asked, barely breathing. Someone who's seen death and walked away from it. She turned from him, heart pounding. I'm not your story, Damien. No, he said. But you're part of mine now. Why me? Because you shouldn't have survived Juarez. The name hit her like a gunshot. How do you... I was there, he said. The night your house burned. I pulled 2 bodies from the fire. Neither of them were you. Her knees nearly gave out. My brother. He shook his head. Gone before I arrived. Her breath caught. Then why save me? He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Because the men who killed your family were mine. She froze. You did this? No, he said, voice rough. But I ordered the raid. I didn't know who they'd find inside. I didn't know they'd find you. Her stomach twisted. So this is guilt. Call it what you want. She backed away. You're a murderer. He nodded once. Yes, and now what? You think saving me fixes it? No, he said softly. It just lets me sleep sometimes. The silence between them pulsed, too alive, too full of the things neither of them could unsay. Finally, she whispered, You should have left me there. I tried, he said. But you looked at me, and I couldn't. She turned away, pressing her palm to the cold glass of the window. The rain outside had slowed to a steady drizzle, the kind that made the world look like it was holding its breath. You think I don't remember that night, she said. But I do. Tell me. I remember the smoke, the sound of my brother screaming, the flash of headlights. Her voice cracked. And I remember a man's voice saying, Don't look, that was you. He didn't move, but something shifted in his face, a flicker of something raw, almost human. Yes, he said quietly. It was. The clock ticked once, twice. She turned back to him, her eyes shining in the dim light. Then why chase me? Why not let me disappear? He stepped closer again, close enough that she could feel his breath. Because you have something that belongs to me. Her pulse raced. You mean the ledger? Yes, she swallowed. And if I destroyed it? Then I'd destroy everything that mattered to me for nothing. You mean your business? He shook his head. I mean you. Her breath caught. Don't. He leaned in, his voice a whisper that brushed against her skin. You think I don't know what you are, Isabella? You think I don't see it every time you look at me? What do you see? He hesitated, and when he spoke, his voice broke in a way she hadn't thought possible. I see the thing I can't own and can't let go of. Her chest ached. You don't even know me. Then tell me, he said. Tell me who you are when you stop running. She stared at him, trembling. Someone who doesn't believe in monsters anymore. He smiled, faint, pained. Then you shouldn't be here. Why? Because I am one. The lights flickered. Somewhere outside a car engine roared, cutting through the rain. Damien S. head snapped toward the window. Get down, he hissed. Before she could move, the glass shattered. Gunfire ripped through the room. Damien grabbed her, pulling her to the floor as bullets tore through the walls. The smell of smoke and dust filled the air. Who are they? She gasped. He drew his gun, eyes scanning the window. People who think killing you hurts me, does it? He looked at her, and in that split second, she had her answer. Yes. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it began. Silence. Then, footsteps. Damien rose slowly, moving to the door. He opened it just enough to see the parking lot. 2 cars, black, tinted, speeding away into the night. He turned back to her. Pack your things. Where are we going? He holstered his weapon, his voice low and certain. Somewhere they won't find you. Not unless I want them to. And if I say no? He smiled faintly. You won't. Why are you so sure? He looked at her, his gaze softening just enough to hurt. Because even when you're afraid, you keep looking at me. Outside, the storm eased into silence. Inside, she stood in the half-dark, heart pounding. Caught between terror and something she didn't yet have a name for. He offered his hand. She didn't take it. Not yet. But she didn't run either, because deep down, in some quiet, broken place, she already knew the man who could destroy her might also be the only one who could make her feel alive again. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. The road to Santa Cruz County wound through the desert, like a scar, narrow, cracked, and swallowed by silence. The only light came from the headlights of the black SUV slicing through the darkness, its tires whispering over the asphalt. Inside, Isabella Cruz sat in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, her gaze fixed on the endless stretch of night ahead. Damien Vargas drove without speaking. He didn't need to. His presence filled the air, thick and heavy, as if the silence between them were alive. They'd left Tucson before dawn after the attack. 2 of his men had been found dead in the lot. The walls of the motel were riddled with bullets. Whoever wanted her gone or wanted him to suffer had come close. Now, they were heading toward the border mountains, where the desert bled into forest and the cartel's shadows disappeared. "You're quiet," he said finally. His voice low, steady. "I'm thinking," she replied. "About what?" "How a man like you decides who to save." He smirked faintly. "I don't. I just do what I can live with." "And what about killing? Can you live with that?" He turned his head slightly, his eyes catching the glow of the dashboard. "I don't live with it. I live after it." Isabella looked out the window again, the landscape sliding past. Ghost towns, empty lots, the skeletons of old motels swallowed by sand. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. "Really, I told you." "No," she said, her voice trembling. "You told me a version that sounds good enough to believe." He exhaled slowly. "Then here's the real one." She turned to him, her pulse quickening. "I'm helping you," he said, "because what's in that ledger could destroy me. And because the man who wants it most used to stand where I stand now." "Cortez," she whispered. He nodded once. "My second. My brother in everything but blood. And now he's the ghost that won't die." They reached the safe house at dawn, a ranch hidden in the hills, surrounded by saguaros and sand. The place was old but quiet, the kind of silence that didn't ask questions. Isabella stepped out of the car, stretching stiff legs. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere no one comes without my permission." "That's comforting," she muttered. He smiled faintly. "You'll be safe here, safe from everyone but you." Damien's expression didn't change. "You think I'd hurt you?" She met his eyes. "I think you already have." He didn't deny it. Inside, the walls were lined with old photographs, black and white portraits of men with hard eyes and sharper suits. "My father," he said, nodding toward one of them. "He built the Vargas name before I learned what it meant." Isabella studied the photo. "You look like him." He poured 2 glasses of tequila, handed her one. "He taught me everything I know about power, and nothing about mercy." "And your mother?" He paused. "She left when I was 9. Why?" "Because she didn't like the man her son was becoming." Isabella took the glass, her hand brushing his. "And what kind of man was that?" "The kind who stopped believing in redemption." She held his gaze for a long moment. "You talk like someone who wants it." He smiled, tired and sharp. "I don't deserve it." "Maybe not," she said. "But that's never stopped anyone before." He looked at her, really looked, as if she'd said something he didn't know how to answer. Later, she wandered the ranch alone, the sun heavy over the desert. She found a barn behind the house, old, half-collapsed. The scent of hay and gasoline thick in the air. Something metallic caught her eye. A locked chest beneath a tarp. Curiosity won. She found a crowbar, pried it open. Inside were stacks of cash, weapons, and a small, leather-bound notebook. Her stomach turned when she saw the initials, burned into the cover. I.C. Her initials. She opened it slowly. Inside were photos, grainy, black and white surveillance stills. Her everywhere she'd been in the last 6 months. Every border crossing. Every motel. Every bus stop. And beneath the photos, reports. Names. Contacts. Routes. And then, one line written in Damien's handwriting. Subject not to be harmed. Retrieve and protect until ledger recovered. Her breath caught. She wasn't a person to him. She was a mission. The barn door creaked behind her. Damien stood there, his shadow cutting across the floor. "I told you not to go through my things," he said quietly. She held up the notebook. "You've been tracking me since before I ran." "Yes, you were using me, at first, she shouted. "You hunted me down like an animal. I kept you alive. For yourself." His voice cracked. "Because I didn't want to lose you, too." The words stopped her cold. "Too?" He hesitated. "Who else?" she asked. He stepped closer. "A girl, years ago. Younger than you. She saw something she shouldn't have. One of our men killing a police chief. I promised her safety. What happened to her?" "She believed me." Silence. Isabella's throat ached. "So you think protecting me now erases that?" He looked at her, eyes dark, voice breaking. No, I think it's the only thing keeping me from turning into the man who killed her. She dropped the notebook to the floor. You already are. He flinched like she'd struck him. Isabella, he said softly, stepping forward. I know what I've done. I know what I am. But you don't, she whispered, backing away. He stopped. Don't touch me, she said, tears welling. Don't pretend this is anything more than guilt. He looked at her for a long, heavy moment, then said quietly, You think guilt makes a man stay? Her voice shook. Then what does? Hope, he said. Her breath hitched. Hope for what? He smiled faintly, brokenly. That someone like you could still look at someone like me and not see a monster. The silence after that was unbearable. She turned away, her shoulders trembling. You don't need me for that. You're wrong, he said. You're the only one who could. He stepped forward again, slowly, like approaching something sacred. For a moment she didn't move. For a moment she almost let him. Then she whispered, If you come any closer, I'll kill you. And for the first time he believed her. He left the barn without another word. She stayed there until the sun went down, her tears drying on her skin by the time she walked back to the house. She knew what she had to do. She'd leave before dawn. With or without him, because if she stayed, she wouldn't just lose herself, she'd forgive him. And that would be worse than dying. The desert night was alive with ghosts, wind swept through the ranch, carrying whispers of dust and memory, brushing against the cracked windows and creaking wood. The old house groaned in its sleep. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried, long, low. Lonely. Isabella Cruz sat on the edge of the bed, her backpack open beside her. Inside, a few bills, a knife, and a single key, the one Damien had dropped earlier that week, the one she'd quietly pocketed. She didn't plan to run again. She planned to disappear. There was a difference. Running meant fear. Disappearing meant control, and she'd lost enough of that already. She pulled on her jacket, her body still aching from the wound she'd wrapped herself in after the gunfight. Her shoulder throbbed. Her heart did worse. She glanced at the window. The moon was a dull silver coin in the sky, lighting the sand in ghostlight. The world outside felt like a test, cruel and waiting. She slipped out quietly, her boots silent on the old wood floors, but Damien Vargas was already waiting for her. He was sitting in the hallway. In the half-dark, a glass of tequila in his hand. His gun beside it. Going somewhere? He asked, his tone calm. Isabella froze. Move! Can't. I wasn't asking. He stood slowly, the light catching the tiredness under his eyes. You really think I'd let you walk into the desert alone at night? She lifted her chin. You don't get to decide what happens to me. His gaze softened. That's exactly why I'm standing here. She clenched her fists. You've been standing in everyone's way your whole life, haven't you? Deciding who lives, who dies, who runs. He didn't answer. You say you want to protect me, she went on, voice trembling. But it's not protection. It's possession. He stepped closer. Isabella. No! She snapped. You don't get to say my name like it belongs to you. Silence fell between them, sharp, heavy, final. Then quietly he said, You're right. The softness in his voice disarmed her more than his violence ever could. I don't own you, he said. But I do owe you. For what? For the first time in my life, I looked at someone and didn't want to ruin them. Her throat tightened. You already have. He nodded once, accepting it like a sentence. Then let me fix what I can. Before she could answer, the sound of engines shattered the quiet. Dozens of them. Damien's eyes snapped toward the window. Get down. Who is it? He grabbed his gun, chambered around. Cortez. Her stomach dropped. How? He cut her off. He has eyes everywhere. I knew this day would come. Then why stay here? Because running never ends. The headlights cut through the windows, bright white slicing through darkness. Shadows moved outside. Men, guns, the metallic click of safeties releasing. Damien turned to her. You know the barn? She nodded. There's a tunnel under it. It'll take you out to the canyon road. Follow it until the riverbed. I'm not leaving you. He smiled faintly. You said that once before. This isn't the same. It always is. He touched her cheek, brief, careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish. When they come, don't look back. Her breath caught. Please. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, if I make it out, I'll find you. If I don't, she shook her head. Don't say it. He smiled again, sad this time. Then don't listen. The first gunshot hit the door like thunder. Damien pushed her toward the back room. Go! Come with me. He shook his head. Not yet. Damien! But he was already gone, moving down the hallway, firing into the shadows that poured through the windows. The sound of gunfire filled the house. Deafening. Endless. Isabella ran, down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the back. The air was filled with smoke and sand. She heard shouting in Spanish, boots pounding on the floorboards, the crash of glass Dot at the barn. She dropped to her knees, tearing open the floorboards he'd shown her. The tunnel gaped below, dark, cold, narrow. She climbed down, her hands shaking, the echoes of bullets above following her into the earth. The tunnel was barely wide enough to crawl through. Her knees scraped rock, her breath shallow. She didn't know how long she crawled. Minutes, hours, a lifetime. Then she saw it. Light. She pulled herself out into the open desert. The air was sharp, clean. Behind her, the ranch was burning, a red wound against the night. She screamed his name once. But the wind took it. Then came the explosion. The sound ripped through the hills, tearing the silence apart. The fire rose higher, consuming everything, and in that moment, Isabella fell to her knees. Not because she was weak, but because strength meant nothing when the only man who'd ever seen you was burning behind you. Morning came slowly. The fire was still visible in the distance, now just a black column of smoke against the pale sky. Isabella walked toward the canyon, her body trembling, her throat raw. When she reached the ridge, she stopped. Below her, the desert stretched endless and golden, a new world that didn't know her name. She should have kept walking. But something in her made her turn back one last time. And there, by the burned remains of the barn, through the shimmer of heat, she saw him, or thought she did, Damien, standing, watching. Her. Alive. Their eyes met across the distance. He raised a hand, slow, steady. She didn't wave back. She couldn't, because she didn't know if he was real, or if the desert, cruel and holy as it was, had given her a ghost to say goodbye to. She turned away and started walking again. The sun rising higher, her shadow long and thin across the sand. Behind her, the wind carried the faintest echo of his voice. Don't run this time. She didn't, for once in her life. She just kept walking. The road out of Santa Cruz County shimmered beneath the heat. The desert stretched wide and endless, the kind of horizon that made you believe the world could start over if you just kept walking. Isabella Cruz had been walking for hours. Her clothes were torn, her throat raw, her heart carrying the slow, heavy rhythm of survival. Every step felt like leaving something behind, blood, fear, memory. She didn't look back. Not anymore. When she finally reached the small border town of Douglas, she found a diner, one of those forgotten places where the world stopped noticing people. She took a seat by the window, ordered black coffee, and stared at her reflection in the glass. The girl who looked back at her wasn't the same one who had crossed from Juarez months ago. That girl had been afraid of her own pulse. This one, she carried fire in her chest and silence in her gaze. She touched the bruise on her collarbone, the faint mark left by Damien's grip the night he'd pushed her toward safety. Alive, because of him. Or despite him. She wasn't sure which. A man at the counter switched on the small TV above the bar. The sound was low, crackling. The body of Javier Cortez confirmed dead following last night's explosion in Santa Cruz County. Authorities have yet to comment on the whereabouts of Damien Vargas, believed to have been killed in the same blast. Isabella froze. The waitress turned up the volume. Though reports are conflicting, several witnesses claim a single survivor was seen leaving the Vargas ranch before it was engulfed in flames. The identity of this survivor remains unknown. Isabella exhaled slowly. The noise of the diner faded. He was gone. Maybe not. The uncertainty felt like its own kind of truth, the one she could live with. She spent the next weeks drifting. Small towns. Long roads. A name that changed with every motel she passed through. She picked up work fixing cars, cleaning rooms, even driving freight once. No questions. No attachments. The desert had taught her that survival didn't require answers, only motion. But sometimes, when the nights stretched long and the wind howled across the flat land, she'd hear him. That voice, deep, patient, dangerous. A memory that refused to fade. Don't run this time. And she didn't, not anymore. 3 months later, she reached Bisbee, a small mountain town carved into red stone and silver dust. The streets were narrow, lined with ghost houses and forgotten mines. She rented a small room above a bar, started working in the garage next door. She didn't tell anyone her name. She didn't need to. People here didn't ask. They just nodded, smiled, and minded their own ghosts. It was enough. Or it was supposed to be. Until the night the stranger walked into the garage. It was late. Rain tapped against the tin roof, soft and rhythmic. The lights flickered. Isabella was bent under the hood of an old pickup when she heard footsteps, slow. Steady. Shop's closed, she said without looking up. I don't mind waiting. The voice froze her where she stood. Low. Rough. Familiar. She lifted her head slowly. Heart thundering. He stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain. A scar along his jaw, his clothes torn but clean. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, found hers across the dim light. Damien Vargas. Alive. Her breath broke. You, he smiled faintly. I told you I'd find you. She took a step back, her hands trembling. You were dead, almost. How? He shrugged. Cortez wanted me buried with him. I decided otherwise. She laughed, broken, breathless. You shouldn't be here. He stepped closer, each movement careful, deliberate. And yet, I don't want your protection. I'm not here to protect you. Then why? He stopped just in front of her, his gaze softening. To see if you survived me. The words hit her harder than the memory of the fire. She swallowed. And if I didn't? He smiled, small, tragic. Then I'd be the monster you said I was. Her chest tightened. You still are, maybe. He looked down, then back up at her. But so are you now. Silence stretched between them, full of everything they'd said and everything they couldn't. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I told you once, he said. His voice low, steady. You had something that belonged to me. And what's that? He stepped closer, the scent of rain and smoke filling the air between them. My peace. She shook her head, eyes wet, voice trembling. You don't get to find peace in me, Damien. Then where? He asked, almost pleading. Because I've searched the world for it, and it's only quiet when I see you. Her hands balled into fists. You ruined everything. I know. You killed my family. I did. You made me hate you. He took one more step, closing the space between them until she could feel the heat of him. Then hate me, he said softly. But don't lie and say you forgot me. The air between them cracked, charged. Desperate, impossible. She tried to speak, but the words died in her throat. He reached out, slowly, carefully, as if touching something sacred. His hand brushed her cheek, his thumb tracing the line where a tear had once fallen. Her voice broke. You made me remember how to feel. And now I don't know how to stop. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. Then don't. They stood there, in the dim light of the garage, while the rain fell harder outside, washing away the desert dust. The names, the blood. There was no forgiveness in it. No redemption. Only two broken people standing. In the ruins of everything they'd survived, seeing in each other. The one thing neither could. Destroy. And maybe that was enough, because sometimes survival is redemption. And sometimes loving what haunts you is the only way to stop running from it. By morning, the storm had passed. Isabella stepped out into the dawn, the air cool and wet, the desert blooming around the hills. Behind her, Damien leaned against the doorframe, watching her the way he always did, quiet, unblinking. As if the world ended and began with her. She didn't turn back this time. She just whispered, I'm not running anymore. He smiled faintly. Then neither am I. The sun rose over the mountains, spilling gold across the wet earth. And somewhere in that fragile light, the haunted girl and the cartel lord finally found what they'd both been chasing. Not forgiveness. Not peace, but a place where the ghosts finally stopped following. The end.